What's good, my analysts, and welcome back to the Analyzing PowerShell Payload series. This is episode 4 in the series. In this case, we're going to take a look at another payload, and this will be the first one that we actually have to pop out of CyberChef to grab that tactical intel from. We'll jump right into it here. If you've been with me since the beginning, this is going to look very familiar to you. This is basically structured exactly like the first payload in episode 1. It's very standard. It's got one level of obfuscation. So since we've done this before, I'm just going to burn right through the CyberChef piece. We see our keywords that we know that we're going to have to do a from base64 in CyberChef, and then a g unzip or gunzip, however you want to say it. I think gunzip sounds cooler, but I've been told gzip is the way to say it. Like we've already learned, start from the obfuscated and work our way out. So we're gonna do our regular expression to grab the base64 data from base64, g unzip. We know this from the previous examples that this is shellcode, other keyword, regular expression from base64. And now this looks new, right? And on all the previous examples we've looked at, there's been something to pull on from in CyberChef. We've either got an IP, a domain name, name pipe, user agent string. There was something to give us some context behind it. In this case, we have nothing, but that's okay. You know, we got to adapt, and there's all kinds of tools out there. And we know that this is shellcode, so we're going to say, okay, well, what kind of other options do we have for shellcode analysis? If you Google this, the first thing that's going to come up for shellcode analysis is a tool called scdbg. And I'll put links to everything I'm talking to in the description. And to do that, we're going to have to save this off. So we'll save this off. We'll call it example for depth and save it off. So scdbg, there are tons and tons of existing blogs and YouTube videos on how to do analysis using this tool. Very fancy analysis. I'm not that guy. We're going to do the easy way. I'm going to show you what you do on a standard thing. If you actually ran the shellcode from the previous examples that we got through decoding with CyberChef through scdbg, you would get those same. You'd actually even get more information normally, but you would be able to get that same tactical information. So we're going to run 2 commands here that are like, hey, even if you don't understand what shellcode analysis is, you need to know what these 2 commands are. The first thing is /f, which is you're pointing it to a file, and /find sc. And that means find shellcode. And it's going to do some smart stuff to try to identify shellcode in the data that we have. Now, this says no shellcode, that's a hard word to say, detected, and saying, oh, I tried my smart stuff and it didn't see it, which is interesting. So it's just pointing at the file and it's going to try to process it. And we get this error. It says error accessing 0, not mapped. These 2 things together. Now, there's probably smart ways to identify the architecture of the shellcode. I see these 2 things. I immediately think, oh, this must be 64-bit shellcode. That's just based on my experiences. scdbg can only do 32-bit shellcode, so I know that, oh, we're gonna have to switch something to else to do 64-bit. But it's really easy. Don't worry. So we can use this other tool called Speakeasy, and all we're gonna do is point it towards that same DAT file. We're gonna say, go ahead and do it as a 64-bit architecture. And this -Q3, I'm just setting it for the time's sake. It'll run through its whole thing, but for the purposes of keeping the video short, we're setting a timeout to 3 seconds. So I'm going to run this, and it's going to analyze the pay code, and voila, here we go. We can see that we have a connect to an IP address and a port right here. So we've been able to get that IP address shellcode style using Speakeasy. Now, let's say you're not comfortable with doing any sort of like analysis in any one of these tools, which I would not blame you. Like, raise your hand if you've ever been personally victimized by a malware analysis blog post before. I've been there. I'm going to show you a way we can compile this shellcode into an executable, run it, and then just see what happens to it. Now, obviously, I've made this payload, so I know it's not connecting to anything evil, but disclaimer, if you're doing this in the real world, make sure you're running this on you know, a VM or some box that you don't care about lighting on fire and throwing away because if it gets popped because you're doing some of this analysis. Okay, so the two tools we're going to be using to do this is yasm and golink, and we're actually going to compile that shellcode that we downloaded from CyberChef into a portable executable and run it and see what we can grab. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create an ASM file, which, do not be intimidated, it's only 3 lines. And we're basically global space start, and include the bin binary data of the shellcode that we downloaded. And we'll just save this as example 4.asm. And we close this, we don't need any more. And then we're gonna run the two tools. First one is yasm. And we know the architecture of this is 64-bit. So we're gonna say do 64-bit, specify our output, and we're gonna output an object file, which is gonna be used for golink. And we're gonna point it towards our ASM file, which points towards our DAT file that we downloaded. And it's gonna build this object file so we can actually make the executable. Hit enter, you get nothing back, that means good. No errors, you're not gonna get any feedback other than that. The next thing we're gonna do is run the golink command /ni/entry, telling it where to start. We defined our start function, remember, to include that shellcode data. And we're gonna say, okay, and then do example 4, point it towards our object file. We do that, and we should get, hopefully I have my AV disabled, otherwise it's gonna yell at me. And then we have our example 4.exe, right? We just made a binary out of that shellcode. So what you can do, like I said, make sure you do this on a safe, analysis system, is we're gonna use, this is not gonna be shocking to anyone who knows me, but we're gonna use PowerShell to go ahead and pull that same IP we got from the other shellcode analysis tool. And all we're gonna do is run this. We're gonna grab that process information, and we're gonna see if it's sending any SYN packets out and try to grab what IP it's connecting to. So we're gonna run it, and then we're gonna use PowerShell, and there we go. And then we get that same IP address. So now there's 2 ways. One is way kind of easier, and you could use like sysinternal tools or Wireshark, whatever network data you want to do to grab that IP address. But if you're not comfortable working with the shellcode analysis tools, or you just can't get it to work, yasm and golink are a great backup. So now you know how to get the tactical threat intelligence from a 64-bit shellcode when you can't get it out of CyberChef.